Everyone remembers Star Wars knockoffs and Spielberg copycats, but the 80s also gave us sci-fi so insane it got banned by the government. A New York club movie where aliens kill during orgasm, and a dream movie that beat Nolan's Inception by 30 years. These are the forgotten 80s sci-fi movies that were actually awesome. Kicking things off with probably the wildest film on this list, and one most people have never even heard of. This is Andrzej Żuławski's science fiction epic from Poland, and it's as ambitious as it is cursed. Here's the setup. Astronauts flee a dystopian Earth and start a new civilization on another planet. Generations later, a lone astronaut lands there, gets hailed as a messiah, and basically winds up leading a doomed rebellion against psychic alien overlords. Visually, it's a used future, all battered tech and grim reality. This movie pretty much predicted the whole Alien and Mad Max aesthetics before they existed. The story behind the film is just insane. Żuławski started shooting in the mid-70s, but the Polish communist authorities pulled the plug, calling it subversive. The whole project was shut down. Żuławski got exiled. For a decade, the footage just sat there unfinished. In a bizarre twist, the government official who shut the production down died in a plane crash. So Żuławski finally got a chance to patch the film together in 1987. This thing premiered at Cannes in 1988 and instantly earned cult status. Critics compared it to Kubrick and Tarkovsky. Big claims, but honestly not far off. Even today, it holds a perfect Rotten Tomatoes score. The Quiet Earth is a New Zealand sci-fi classic about total solitude and what happens when you might be the last human alive. Zach Hobson, played by Bruno Lawrence, wakes up to a world with absolutely no one left. He goes wild, proclaims himself president of the Quiet Earth, talks to cardboard cutouts, wanders empty cities. Eventually, he finds two other survivors, and together they try to figure out what wiped out humanity. The Quiet Earth wasn't a smash when it came out, but it's since become a cult favorite. It's ranked among New Zealand's best films, and even Neil deGrasse Tyson calls it one of his favorite science fiction movies. The film's first act, just Zach alone, losing his mind in beautiful empty cityscapes, has inspired everything from 28 Days Later to I Am Legend. What's aged best is the movie's anxiety about science. What caused humanity's extinction is fiction, but it predicted the worry that huge experiments might have disastrous consequences. A little like how we talk about particle colliders today. Dreamscape is the kind of 80s sci-fi you just don't get anymore. It actually started with a sci-fi novel idea, Roger Zelazny's The Dream Master, and evolved into its own screenplay. Dennis Quaid plays Alex Gardner, a psychic who gets pulled into an experiment to enter people's nightmares. At first, it's all about helping people beat their phobias, but then naturally the government wants to use it as an assassination tool. Suddenly, Quaid is fighting a psychic hitman inside the president's head, dodging nuclear apocalypse dream sequences and a stop-motion Snake Man monster. It's got horror, it's got action, it's got jokes, like Inception by way of late-night cable. Dreamscape came out just as the PG-13 rating was invented, and it made good use of that. Enough scares and weirdness for the teens, not too much for the parents. It was actually the second PG-13 film ever released, right after Red Dawn. The box office was solid, over $12 million on a $6 million budget, and it's held on to cult status ever since. Here's one that should have inspired a generation, but bad timing got in the way. The story's about a group of teenagers at NASA's real-life space camp in Alabama. They're just supposed to be learning about shuttles and astronaut training, but a malfunction and a helpful little robot accidentally launches them into space for real. The kids, plus their instructor, Kate Capshaw, have to use everything they learned to get home alive. It's basically every kid's daydream, but with real NASA tech and plenty of 80s optimism. And behind the scenes, SpaceCamp had full NASA backing. Filming at real locations, actual astronauts consulting, even Buzz Aldrin visiting the set. Problem is, SpaceCamp came out just a few months after the Challenger disaster. Suddenly, nobody wanted to see a movie about a space shuttle mishap. The film got almost no marketing, theaters pulled trailers, and the box office bombed, less than $10 million on a budget twice that. Critics weren't kind either. Most found it too implausible or kiddie, even if the cast, including a young Joaquin Phoenix, was good. However implausible it was, SpaceCamp actually got one thing right: regular people going to space. It was far-fetched back in 1986, but now with private companies launching civilians and even Katy Perry going to space, it doesn't seem so impossible. Three misfit kids build a spaceship in a junkyard, powered by alien tech they dream up and fly it into space. You've got Ethan Hawke as the sci-fi dreamer, River Phoenix as the nerdy inventor, and their friend Darren. Their homemade spaceship is all junkyard parts and computer hacks. When they finally take off, they meet two aliens who learned everything about Earth from watching TV. The movie flopped when it opened, mostly because Paramount rushed it out unfinished. Director Joe Dante was forced to stop editing and deliver a rough cut. At least an hour of footage got left out. Critics said the first two acts were great, but the ending was too cartoony. Over time, though, Explorers found its audience. Home video and TV gave it a second life, and now it's a cult favorite. Even Elon Musk joked he tried to build an Explorer ship as a kid. And if the whole kids on bikes chasing a mystery vibe looks familiar, that's because Stranger Things borrowed the entire playbook. This one has Van Damme as Gibson Rickenbacker. Yeah, the guitar names are intentional. Wandering a plague-ravaged wasteland. There's a cyborg woman carrying the cure for the living death, hunted by pirates led by the memorably unhinged Fender Tremolo. Gibson has a personal score to settle, so cue the roundhouse kicks, gory brawls, and Mad Max-style carnage. The story is basically just there to connect the fights, but that's kind of the point. Cyborg was basically a Canon film salvage job. The studio was supposed to make a Masters of the Universe sequel and a Spider-Man movie, but when those fell apart, director Albert Pugin wrote Cyborg over a weekend to use the leftover sets and costumes. It shot in just 23 days, mostly in North Carolina's ruins, with a budget under $500 grand. The movie ended up grossing $10 million in the US alone. It was a rare late hit for Canon. The critics trashed it. Rotten Tomatoes is 22%, but fans didn't care. Grindhouse audiences and Van Damme devotees loved the action, especially the infamous flooded slum fight where he does his signature split. Outland is what you get when you put High Noon in space and cast Sean Connery as the lawman. Set on Jupiter's moon, it's all miners, corruption, and one honest marshal trying to survive. Connery's O'Neill is up against a drug smuggling ring that's causing miners to go insane and die in brutal ways. When he tries to shut it down, he ends up facing assassins sent to take him out, alone, since even his deputies bail on him. The film's famous for its explosive decompression scene, one of the best practical effects of its era. The production actually went all in on authenticity. Huge sets at Pinewood Studios, NASA consulting for space details. The director, Peter Hyams, wanted it to feel like a working mining town, just in space. Outland didn't blow up the box office, but it's respected by sci-fi fans and won an Oscar nomination for Best Sound. Over time, it's gained status as one of the best serious 80s sci-fi films. Time for a what-if classic, The Final Countdown. The nuclear aircraft carrier USS Nimitz gets sucked through a time vortex and pops out right before Pearl Harbor. So now the crew is armed with F-14s and modern firepower, staring down the Japanese fleet in 1941. Should they stop the attack? Save history? The film isn't interested in breaking the time loop. The Nimitz gets pulled back to 1980 before changing anything. There's a Twilight Zone twist with a rescued senator and his secretary turning up old and alive in the present. This movie is part time travel fantasy, part Navy recruitment ad. The Navy gave full access to the real Nimitz, so most of what you see is authentic. Crew, planes, even a real emergency landing caught on film. That's a big reason the aerial scenes are still impressive today. Reviews were split. Critics loved the premise but wanted a bigger payoff. But the Navy actually insisted on a positive portrayal and no actual history changing, so the time loop ending was non-negotiable. 1984 is one of those rare adaptations that takes its source material deadly seriously. Director Michael Radford went all in on George Orwell's vision, filming in London during the actual spring months of 1984, just like in the book. Even that opening shot of Winston Smith scribbling April 4, 1984 in his diary was shot on April 4, 1984. That's how much the production cared about nailing the atmosphere. The world on screen is just as grim as you remember from the novel. Constant surveillance, gray decay everywhere, propaganda dripping from every wall. John Hurt plays Winston Smith, this anxious, broken man stuck under Big Brother's thumb in a bombed-out Britain. He's working at the Ministry of Truth, spending his days erasing and rewriting history to match whatever the party says this week. Pretty much everyone agrees it's the closest any adaptation has come to capturing the feel of Orwell's novel, even if that means it's so miserable you'll never enjoy it. And its legacy is massive. Every time debates about surveillance, government spying, or propaganda break out, you see clips from 1984 on the news. The film didn't predict new tech, but it absolutely nailed the mood. Telescreens watching you, news being rewritten. And Big Brother is watching you turned into a real-life catchphrase. Moving to New York in the early 80s, here's Liquid Sky, and if you want weird, you got it. Margaret is a punk model drifting through Manhattan's art scene, and she's got an invisible alien hanging around her rooftop apartment. The alien feeds on people during orgasm, so every time someone gets too close, they die. Liquid Sky went from total outsider art to a full-blown midnight movie hit. Made on just $500,000, it became the biggest indie film of 1983, over $1.7 million at the box office, festival awards, and now it sits at 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics were split. Some said the plot was nonsense, but nobody could argue with those visuals. New York never looked better. For all its outrageousness, Liquid Sky ended up ahead of the curve. It even became an eerie metaphor for the AIDS crisis. Sex literally turns deadly.